Right, welcome back to another episode of Into the Valley, where today we will be looking back on Charlton's final game of the season, 3-1 defeat to Swansea. Didn't matter in the end because we did all our business last week. So look, today is going to be an episode. We're going to quickly go over the Swansea game. To be honest, it's not going to be our kind of normal style of going into detail on it because
who cares?
Yeah, we really didn't really care much about it. But what we are going to do today, we're going to then move on to, from there, just looking over the whole of the squad and looking at what we kind of feel going into next season, whether we are looking at kind of from our thoughts on whether we sell players, keep them, are they going to be squad players, full-time players, and also looking over the loan players we've currently got in the squad, but also, and probably equally as importantly, the players we've currently got out on loan who potentially are kind of coming back into the setup. So, so let's start off on the Swansea game. Thoughts?
I mean, I think because it's that end of season, both teams are safe. It is very much one of those games where neither side are really too fussed about the result. I think obviously you want to finish as high up the league as you can, and actually, even as a fan watching it, I thought I wouldn't really care, but you still want that victory, don't you? Like, of course, when you're watching your team, you want them to win. And actually, when we scored sort of the late equaliser, I did actually think, like, oh, could we push on and get a win and finish the season off nicely? But it wasn't to be. I think it was one of those where I think I've seen us play so many times this season where the midfield has been the battle we've lost, and that's why we've lost the game. And this is just another sign of it. I think the players probably obviously that were picked. He picked a fairly strong lineup, to be fair. I thought he might rotate a bit more heavily, but we went with a lineup.
I think it was also a lineup, though, that was kind of forced hand in regards to some injury problems, like the back three lineup of Gillespie, James Burke.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say it's particularly
Well,
ideal.
Shenjay got injured in the last one. He probably would have been playing if he was still fit. But it's interesting because on the comms they were sort of saying like there was probably a few players picked in that team that he was a bit of a nod to say sort of thank you for your sort of service for the time you've been at Charlton. For example, the two loan players, they're probably not going to be back after they've left the club. So there's probably elements of that as well. Maybe Gillespie being in there is also forced, but it's a bit of a like that could be his last game, that sort of thing. So Cody's the same. I watched the game and I actually, obviously we're safe, so it didn't really matter the scoreline. But spells we were all right, but we let them pretty much dominate us, and then we were pretty sloppy at times.
I think it highlights in a game like that. We know where our weaknesses are, but our strength comes probably in our character, the fight of a game. And to me, when it is maybe there's not as much on the line, we go toe-to-toe just in a more enjoyable game.
Yeah.
We probably highlight our flaws more so, because I think where we probably pick up the most amount of points and everything is where we really dig deep. And you could see it just wasn't quite in there with today, but also, and understandably so, I guess.
I think so. And like as fans, we don't really, like I said before, we don't really care what the score is in that last game. Now we're safe. But I think when it's a home game for the team that have got their last game of the season, their fans are quite up for it. It's a bit of like a party atmosphere, and actually Swansea, you could tell, were pretty free flowing and like sort of able to just take their time on the ball and that sort of
They're
thing.
an interesting team because I think when we look at the home game against them, I actually thought they were quite good then.
Yeah,
and I actually think if they can sort out, maybe get a few more players in. I think when we did our predictions at the beginning of the season, one of the things that was said about them was they had the core of a pretty good squad, but not quite enough to kind of probably do much with it. And I think that's probably how it summed up their season. They've gone through real peaks and troughs, but when they're actually playing well, they're not bad.
They're not bad. No, they're not bad. I think they're a bit vulnerable at sort of set pieces. Like you saw how easily we scored from our header, but I think like they've got some creative players. I really like Franco. I think he looks like a really good player. Both games he played against us, he ran that midfield and was a real thorn in the side actually. And then they obviously got Vipotnik, who didn't actually score yesterday, but is a really dangerous striker. I think they're going to struggle to keep hold of him, to be honest. He ended up top scorer in the league.
It seems probably
pretty good.
Well, I think you've probably got one or two. He either goes to a different level or
one of the
one of
bigger
the
clubs
team,
in
one
the
of the big,
Championship.
especially one of the big clubs maybe coming down.
Well,
or
it's a
something like that.
proven
Yeah.
it's a proven striker who scores goals at that level, and actually, if you get like a West Ham and whoever ends up coming down might be sniffing around for him because he's going to guarantee them goals. So yeah,
Ida hit his form against us like he seems to have done.
yes,
this
that's three
season.
scored now, isn't it, against us? I mean, the deflected goal, the second one yesterday was pretty lucky in the end, but he's a dangerous striker actually, and I think he's on big money there as well. That's
I think they signed him for quite big money. I think overall,
wages are high.
I'm not 100% sure he's been that much of a success, but
No.
when he plays against
He
Charlton,
seems to
is, yeah.
score against us, doesn't he? But yeah, overall, I thought we didn't play our best at all by any stretch. But Swansea aren't a bad side, and actually they just showed that they can score goals. They're pretty creative. They punished us when they got the chance to, and they could have had a couple more probably. They had a goal offside. So yeah, but overall, like, not fussed, to be honest.
No, we obviously had the Lee Burn goal, the only
Yeah.
one from our side. Bit of a strange one, really poor defending, as you say.
Yeah.
And probably save the best till last on that side. Sometimes you just have to appreciate a good goal when it happens, and their final goal
free
from
kick.
Walter, I think it was, to the free kick was
Sensational. It's postage stamp stuff, isn't it?
well,
to
it's
be fair?
strange because say it would have absolutely been gut wrenching, but I actually quite enjoyed the goal.
Yeah, no. It was a great finish, and actually, that's like again just shows how technical some of their players are. To be fair, it's a great goal. On the Leeburn one though, as well, like in the commentary, they said that it was his first goal in 26 games. Which actually I knew he'd been on a bad run, and I knew obviously our strikers in general haven't scored many goals, but that is atrocious.
Well, it'll be an interesting one as we go into later, and that one comes up as a conversation piece. But I think that's pretty much all we really want to go over on the Swansea game.
Yeah, it's not one to analyse deeply, is it? Because, like I said, both teams on the beach a little bit, weren't they?
Yeah, no, definitely. Well, now we can bring up for the final time this season in regards to this. The league table, final spot, not too much difference to where we were looking before, but finishing the season now in 19th place, 53 points. I mean, if you had said it at the beginning of the season, I think it's where we roughly had us in the predictions.
Yeah, anything above relegation.
6 points above relegation. I think...
Yeah, it's a perfect way to finish the season in a way. Like, obviously, I know... We got our last victory at the Valley, and that was a really, really nice sign-off because obviously that was the game we needed to get us over the line. And I think anything after that, it didn't matter. I think position in the table didn't matter. I think it was just purely that securing the stability in the league and another season in the Championship was all we were ever wanting. So league position was a bit irrelevant in the end. But 19th's a solid finish. And we finished above Blackburn and West Brom, who are both very solid sides.
Yeah.
So, we can take that.
Well, and I think the one thing I take from it as well, because I know the conversation's been around the fact we were fortunate with points deductions and all of this kind of malarkey, but the realistic side is actually the points deductions, even with them, didn't make the difference to it. And overall, as I say, first year back in the Championship, it was all about survival. It's what we've got. I think it brings on to, and we know this, a huge summer. And I think something, obviously, we're going to have our views towards it in regards to kind of going on to the players that involves as well. I think for a final day, obviously, for us, it didn't mean too much, but I thought just quite an interesting one over, obviously, where the final spots came into play at the top end of the table. If you told me off the back of our game against them last week, the fact that Hull would be that 6th place, I mean, fair play.
Your mate Ollie McBurney got a double as well.
Yeah.
Did you see the celebrations were pretty wild?
Yeah, as soon as I saw it, and I heard him on as well. He came on TalkSport as well. It was like after he just really did my head in that day.
Yeah. To be fair, I mean, he stepped up, didn't he? He scored the pen, and he scored. Their second goal looked a bit offside actually, but it doesn't really matter to them, does it? They've got it over the line.
But would they get it over the line? The realistic side is both Wrexham and Derby slipped up, or to be fair, Wrexham had a tough game.
Yeah, they did.
They did. Who were
Drew
playing?
Derby,
Sheffield United.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, they were winning and then they lost in the end.
Yeah. So that there, and at the top of the table, thank you so much, Ipswich. It may not prevent Millwall from going up, but definitely delayed it.
Yeah.
I don't know if you saw online. It really made me laugh. But have you seen the Millwall fans
running on the
pitch invasion?
Yeah, a bit strange.
It's a bit of a strange one for the players,
well,
but it was a very partial pitch invasion.
Yeah, it's a few
hundred fans who get on the
pitch.
pitch.
The thing is, now they're obviously having to gear up for a playoff, which is always like a crazy ride. And I think the one thing Millwall have in their favour, they've got like a hostile ground. They're very, very like good at the Den. But you're coming up against the likes of Southampton, teams like that, who are in really good form.
They are, but I think they've somewhat lucked out. And it's not lucked out because where they finished in the table, but because they've finished third, they've actually got that game against Hull, who I think in the grand scheme seem a little bit out of place with recent form being there. Also a team who concede a lot, but score a lot, but Millwall are incredibly good defensively, so I see them go through, and then you get to a playoff final. No, it's a one-off game, isn't it? Anything can happen. So
yeah, it's going to be fun to watch. And actually, how nice is it to watch a playoff final without us being involved? Because actually,
I don't know, we do quite well in playoff
we
finals.
do. No, trust. Yeah, we do.
As you will see, we've got our new artwork up, very much highlighting it. So
yeah, we've got some good highlights games on there, but. When it comes to the playoffs, like if you're watching it as a fan, it is absolutely sweaty.
It's horrific, isn't it?
Yeah, so bad. But actually, as a neutral, it's great to watch it unfold. So I'm going to enjoy watching.
I think it's one of those, especially when you're involved. It's one of the, if it goes your way, I don't think there's a greater experience in football. I genuinely think it's one of the most exciting things, but it's such a lottery in regards to when it goes bad. And as Charlton fans, we do know the feeling of going out in semi-finals and Swindon and Shrewsbury, and there's been some
quite horrible times,
the dark days.
But no, the league has been interesting this season, and I think actually if we look at the overall table, you'll realise that it's very tight. Like the whole middle of the table was so tight. You had teams that were really struggling, ending up finishing like 10th, 11th, Norwich. And actually that just shows the strength of the league, because there's a lot of competitive games. Every game is a tough one, and that's why I'm so proud of where we finished actually, because we we've battled against some of the bigger sides and come away with some really, really good results.
No, definitely. Well, let's move on then, and let's go into this squad. It's one that neither of us have actually discussed any of our kind of, although we know where some sit through kind of, well, as much as anyone kind of watching really, our views in the episodes. But I thought we'd go through a little bit blind and see what we think towards it. So let's start off goalkeepers, which I think is an interesting one. I think going into the beginning of the season, one we hoped we'd answered, but I think the feeling's out there and to kind of go into. And let's start on, as the first one, Thomas Kaminski, the player who's brought in to very much be the answer to our woes. What's your view?
So I think overall his season's been decent. I think he has had moments where he's made huge saves in games, and I think he is a very, very good shot stopper. I think that's what the Luton fans were sort of alluding to when we signed him at the time, was he isn't the most confident at times when he comes out to claim things. He can be a bit shaky. I think his distribution, we've talked about all season, has not been great. He does come up with big saves at quite big moments, albeit he also had a few clangers as well, which is common for keepers of that level. My only concern with Kaminski is that he did fall out of favour for a little while and dropped out the side, and I know that sort of coincided. I think he got an injury as well, and that's why Mannion ended up coming back in. But Mannion, and we're going to go on to Mannion in a sec, but we've got probably a keeper that's got just a similar quality, but is on a lot less of a wage bill. I think Kaminski's I think he's our highest earner outside of loans. So he's on 20 grand a week, I think, and that is a high wage to be paying for a keeper that isn't necessarily worth that amount of our sort of budget, which makes me think, is Jones going to maybe look at potentially moving him on and then either getting somebody else in on a lower wage or playing Mannion and then getting somebody else in as a backup? I don't know. That's going to be really interesting to see. But if I had to choose, I would say he is one that you could look at offloading and maybe looking at a different option.
Yep.
I don't know what your thoughts are on.
I would sell. Yeah,
I
think like everything in all of this, it's very easy for us just to say sell. You've got to have the right suitor. But for me, you've hit the nail on the head. I think for the outlay we've got towards him, there had to be a significant improvement.
Yeah.
And for me, as I say, as much as I don't jump on as much of the bandwagon of how bad he's been, I just don't see him bringing what we thought. And for me, we're not in any better a position than we were last year, where we were yo-yoing between keepers, and we need that solid kind of number one spot.
Yeah.
And I think that's where I could then, from there, as I say, for me, Kaminsky definitely.
Well, also we talk about wherever you could offload him, but I could see him going back off to like the Belgian league, which is a bit of money there as well.
Well,
So someone might.
so that's where I think you've potentially got a route to sell him, because he's still
Yeah.
contracted for a couple of years with us. But I think it quite nicely moves on to, from there, as I say, my view on Kaminsky would be sell, but my view on Mannion would be very much to keep.
Yeah.
But not as our number one. I think I've seen enough that I think with Mannion you definitely keep, but for me he is the backup to a number one, and keeper wise that does mean we've got to kind of look into the market for a new keeper, which it seems like every year we're doing that. But Mannion for me, he had that one kind of really good spell through things, but I don't feel confident enough for him to be our number one.
He still has some shaky moments, doesn't he? And that's really a problem, because I think especially the way we've played this season, is we've been a team of very few chances, and when we concede, we find it very hard to get back into a game because we don't score bags of goals. So when we are conceding silly goals from goalkeeping errors, it becomes a big problem. And I think we need somebody in there that's got a much firmer sort of, I don't know if it's experience maybe, because Manion's not played a huge amount of game time at that level. If we could get another experienced keeper in that's maybe a bit less on the wage bill, but somebody that's a little bit safer pair of hands, and like you said, having Mannion as a backup wouldn't be a bad thing at all. So yeah, that might be somewhere we may look at. But for all we know, Jones might rate Kaminsky highly still and keep him in. We don't know, do we?
Yeah, it's a difficult one there, but I just think in the two, as I say, I think there's very little to cut between them, and realistically then you say, well, if there's very little but one is on significantly less money, and the other one is a saleable asset, I think with Kaminsky as well, we've got to look at that in that regard as well. The final one, Kiernan Brooks, obviously brought in, realistically keep.
He'll be there for a
while,
while,
I think he's a much more kind of longer term prospect towards things,
Yeah.
and who knows, I would have nothing against him kind of coming out of the woodwork and being an absolute worldie of a signing, but I think he's just there for what he is, really. So.
Yeah, he'll be a backup for a while, but you never know. Like you said, some players come out of the woodwork from unexpected sort of scenarios. So yeah.
Well, let's move on now into the defence. Let's start on one that I think is a conversation piece. It's not about whether we decide to sell or whatever. It's whether we look to pursue, because he is a lone player, and that would be starting on Connor Cody. I think it's one that personally myself, I like the idea of him still being there next season. I think there's a huge problem in regards to wages, and I have to admit, I don't know if potentially coming down from, unless there was a realistic kind of expectation on the wages, I'm not sure I equally could justify him being there on a high wage.
Well, I'm not sure what his contract scenario is like at Wrexham, whether he's got how many more years he's got on his.
I assume he's got at least a year, mate.
Yeah, so we'd have to sign him, so that's a fee already. And then on top of that, you've got his wages, like you said, which I think he's on about 35 grand a week, something along those lines. With that wage bill, that would significantly be one of our highest. Well, our
He'd
highest.
have to take a pay cut.
Yeah, but then this comes down to, because I watched his post-match interview and he was saying how honoured he was to get the captain armband and stuff at the weekend. He does seem really keen, and he was sort of saying, "Oh, we need to have a chat and stuff like with the club." If he is very, very settled, he likes being at the club, and he's at the sort of back end of his career, which he is. He's not getting on now. He wouldn't be a bad player to get in if the finances added up, and he would be a great player. I've said this before, in the dressing room, just even to have around the team. He's so experienced. We've seen what an impact he's made. If we could get that right, I would happily take him, and I wouldn't necessarily see him as a full starter if we can, because I envisage our midfielders to strengthen massively over the summer. That's what I'm hoping. So he might be one that comes in and out of the side if we did sign him, but I wouldn't be against him coming in at all for those reasons. I think he's a leader. I think he's still got quality. He's shown that he can actually change a game. He's been some pivotal sort of games, really, where he's...
I think you've only got to look at the stats.
Yeah.
I think when he's in the squad, we've actually picked up quite a number of points. And I'm not saying it's solely down to him, but clearly there is an influence there. And I'm with you. I think if you can get him on the right deal,
That's what it comes down
That's
to.
what it all comes down to.
If he
It's
wants-
just
if he's
whether
still
that's
wanting
doable.
a high wage and he can get that sort of wage elsewhere, then he
Mm.
might end up going somewhere
I
else.
wouldn't want to sign him. I suppose that's where I'd look at it. I wouldn't want to sign him to the detriment of us not being able to sign
Other players.
other players, because I think there is some really important, as a position, it's somewhere important we need,
Yeah.
and we could bring in some experienced heads in other positions that still offer that kind of leadership qualities and what we maybe get from him. So yeah, definitely if the deal's right, but yeah, I'm not sure.
I think we may have seen the last of him at Charlton just for those reasons, but it'll be interesting to see how it unfolds.
Next one to move on to, got a year left on his contract, Reece Burke.
Well, we know how injury prone he is, and we knew that when we signed him, to be fair. That one is one that we look at as, can we offload him? I'm not that keen to keep hold of him, if I'm honest. I think he's been all right. He's been far too injury prone in terms of in and out of the side. And I think we could get better for what we are probably paying him. Like, we could look at maybe someone with the same sort of experience, but someone that would be a more solid sort of starter, or if not a starter, then someone that could come in, because to be honest, he was probably brought in as a bit of a utility, sort of in and out of the side anyway.
Well, and I think there was also hope we could maybe keep him fit. I mean, I completely sit with you there. I think he's, for me, 100% a sell. But my problem with that is,
I think he'd be a League One.
Well,
he'd have to go to League One.
I think he'd have to go to League One because of the injury side, and we discussed this, how physical the Championship is. I just don't think his body can do it anymore. But the problem is finding someone who will take him, and I assume wage-wise he's not on huge money, but I can't imagine he's getting paid pittance.
No, and they'd probably be on a higher wage in League One.
Well, I think the option, probably, if I'm looking at it sensibly, is maybe trying to get him out on loan next season, just to help with some of the wages towards him. I don't see the point in having a player who cannot keep fit in any capacity. And I don't really, the problem is, when you're relying on a player like that, even as a squad player, if he's picking up injuries, he can't even cover the squad. I understand why we signed him. I think there was a world where it could have gone right, but for me, I just don't think that signing's worked.
No, I don't. And I also think maybe Championship's a bit of a stretch for him now. I think we've probably realised that he's had a couple of good games.
I don't think it is for his quality. I genuinely
think it's injury.
I think it's injury, and
maybe
he needs to get a run of games to get fit and play well. I think if you could get him fully fit, but it just doesn't seem like he has that ability anymore. And I think with that, then the quality has to be at a lower point. But on his day, I'm still sure he can be a good defender.
I think Nathan Jones will look at moving him on, whether that's loan or selling him. That would be the way.
Yep, no, I agree. Next one to move on to, it's a really, really tough one, this one. I'm not sure which way you're going to go, but Lloyd Jones.
I mean, well, I say keep, but that's if we can keep him. The only thing in our favour is his age. He is getting on a bit now in terms of like going for big money anyway. Because he's been one of the best defenders in the league. We know that. Like he's right up there. So of course keep. And he signed a new contract not long ago, didn't he? Last season, I think, or end of last season.
I think so. He's got a year left after this year. So he's summer.
But that's fine. Like, we can still use that, because, like I said, I don't think value-wise, because of where he is in his career, what his value would be if we were to sell him. I don't actually know.
It's difficult. With a year left on the contract, you'd think. Well, I think with the performances he's put in, definitely there is a decent value there.
Yeah.
I have no idea, because you've also got to have the right team who want him. I'm sure there's suitors out there.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's teams who definitely play the kind of style.
But we've spoken about how we think he'd probably be captain material for next season. And I think if you put that on a plate for him, he clearly loves playing for Charlton. He's been there a long time now, and you can tell, like, he is actually the spine of the team in terms of like the leadership. And he is our best defender by a mile, to be fair. So I think Jones would do everything in his power to keep him, and I think he will stay. So that one is a no-brainer. Like, just keep him in there and build your defence around him, because he's just so good.
Keep. So that's a very easy one.
Agreed. Keep.
One that probably to move on to from there that I don't think is as easy. I think it's very easy when you look at him on his day. Amari Bell.
He's another one that's the injuries is a problem.
Less so of a problem though than Burke.
Yeah. He's not quite as bad, but with Bell, I think when he's fully up and running and like playing to his full capacity, like, he is unbelievable. I really, really rate him.
Yeah.
I do really like the way that he brings us something a bit different at the back, where he can get his foot on the ball and dribble the ball a little bit more, pushes up the pitch. He does get his head up and look for the pass, and that's something that I've really enjoyed watching him do this season. And he's even been pushed out further wide when he's had to.
Mm-hmm.
So he's got a bit of versatility there. And I do think, again, like in that three that we play at the back, when he plays on that left side, he is a really valuable player to have. And I would like to keep him purely on the basis that he stays fit and that we're able to use him on a regular basis. That's the big question mark on that one, is will he stay fit for a whole season?
See, I would say that's probably where I differ from you. So I definitely sit in the keep category of Amari Bell. He's got a year left on his contract, so realistically, once again, similar to what we're talking about with Burke, I'm not sure what you kind of do with that anyway. I think we have to use him in a different way to this year. I think he's got to be a squad player, and I think with it, definitely have spells within the starting lineup. But I think we've kind of been part of his problem this year with injuries. I think the fact whenever he plays out, as much I still think he's capable, and I think he is actually quite good, whenever we play him out in that wing-back position, it always seems to end up following up with injuries. I think if we can use him as that centre-back, but on a rotation basis with your kind of Seshenjes and other players who are maybe coming through, and maybe some new heads in there as well. I think he's a brilliant, brilliant person to keep around. I just think, for me, maybe we have to look at it maybe less so as a starting reliable, because I think what you want from our starting lineup, really, and I think most managers will say this, you want to try and keep a starting 11 that, as much as competition in there, that consistent and not through injuries. If you are switching it round, it's because of form.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, no, it's a good shout. I think whatever happens, I think keep. I think whether he plays more regularly or whether he's one that drops in and out when we need him, he's one that's valuable to us and a very good quality player still.
I agree. Move on. I think this is probably quite a quick one because we know from episodes as to kind of our views on it. He's done a job, but Luke Chambers, I think he's done a job. I'm not massively impressed. I don't know. Similar to Brit, I'll always give the caveat of we have a habit of, with creative players, sucking everything out of them and making them look crap, and Bree's gone on to be incredibly good formed. But Chambers, to me, he doesn't look all that defensively. I think it seems like maybe dropping into that kind of inverted winger into the central midfield.
In the right system, he could be quite dangerous, actually. But I just think the way we've played him is filling a gap that we've needed to so desperately. That left side was just a massive problem throughout the whole season with Edwards.
And since he came in, it was such a noticeable issue.
It's a natural player in his position, isn't it?
Yeah.
So whoever we had brought in would have made a difference, because we also automatically had someone who knew how to play that position, which we weren't using before. But I think you're right. I think he has shown glimpses of like being a good player, and I think there is a good player in there. He's a Liverpool, so clearly he's got ability, but I don't think he's shown enough for us to be like, yeah, let's go get him. Like I like the guy. I think he is like a solid player, but we'll be looking hopefully for something a little bit better than that. And I think with Edwards also coming back, the players that you bring in, obviously, like as a rotation at left side, will be a different type of player maybe to what he is anyway.
Yeah, no, I agree. A quick one to kind of move on to from there. For me, quite a straightforward one. Colin Seshenje.
One of the bright lights this season.
One of the bright lights, I think, definitely some real positive sparks from him. I think, realistically, for him, I think a lot of it is getting him used to English football, getting some of those kind of erratic, the mistakes in there out. But he has to do that at kind of championship level. He has to do it by being part of the squad. And look, I don't see him as coming in and being like kind of first person on the team sheet next season. I think he'll play that role where he drops in and out of the squad. But I think there's probably, going into next season, some really exciting opportunities to him, and I see him as a big part of our future potentially. Look, we never know. Look, what we've seen are glimpses of a good player.
He's been signed as for his potential, hasn't he? He's 22. We've spoken about his age. Like, he's got a lot of time to develop, and that's why he's been brought in, to actually show what he can do at this level. And he's already proven, like in games he has come in this season, he's been a big player for us actually, and he's brought something different. We know how athletic he is, how well he sort of battles and stuff like that. So we said already in the games we've seen, we're like, actually we'd love to see how he progresses. So next season's a perfect chance, like you said, for him to really push on.
Yeah.
And he's signed up for a 4-year contract as well. So
Yeah,
like he's got a lot of time on his
up to
hands.
summer 29.
Yeah, so which is great. I
Mm.
mean, it's brilliant that we're signing players now with a bit of a contract because
Mhm.
all of a sudden you've got time to like take your time and develop them and stuff
Mm.
like that. So he's definitely been brought in for that reason. And actually, yeah, we can't wait to sort of see how he unfolds because
Yeah.
what we've seen so far has been really, really exciting, actually.
Moving on, and one I think once again we've made our views quite clear on this one. Someone who such incredible memories he has brought us. Yeah, one beer.
There he
yeah,
is, yeah.
There he is over here. Macaulay Gillespie.
Yeah, he's had his time now. I think he's brought so much to our club, and I think he has shown how valuable he was in League One. Like obviously getting us promoted with the free kick that we'll never forget. Like those moments are huge. And actually, even in the semi-final, he had the crossfield ball for Jones, didn't he? He's had some big moments in games, and he's just. We've spoken about it quite a few times this season. When he has come in, he's looked slightly out of his depth, and I think he's too vulnerable to the pace of the Championship now. He needs to drop down a division, I would say, and that in that regard, we either sell him on or we loan him out. But I think it'll be a sale.
He's got a year left on his contract,
we'll
so I
sell
think
him.
one of the two. I think the ideal would be probably selling to move
we'll
on.
sell him.
And for it, look, I think the defence is somewhere where we can't be too critical because we have way outperformed in regards to we're such kind of high up in the stats when it comes defensively. But for me, there is still a few little areas like that where the depth and stuff where. Hopefully, by bringing in whether it's free look, defence is not where I want to be spending big money on in the summer. But I do think players like that, there is that kind of need to probably.
I think we just
on.
move him on and improve the quality that we have as a backup now, and that's how you progress actually as a club, isn't it? You sort of upgrade your players as you go, and that's one of the ones we need to, I think. So yeah.
I think another really quick one to go on, but Zach Mitchell as well, who obviously came back off loan. For me, once again, he's. I think when I look at the future of Charlton, I've never seen enough of him.
To be fair, I think there's people out there that really rate him, and I think there have been some games in the past where he's come in and actually proven that he's decent. The only thing is, will he have enough to get game time in the Championship for us? I'm not sure he will. He's being loaned out to like Scottish clubs.
I'm sure he won't.
Yeah, I know.
He's gone out to Scottish clubs, not really played. For me, I'm sure. And look, sometimes when you look at players like that, look, could we be looking at it in a few years' time and he goes somewhere else and starts performing? Sometimes there does need to be a move on sometimes, but for me, I don't see him as part of huge.
Do you remember that
plans.
Lucas Ness that we had? And he was like quite highly rated at the time, and then he just sort of fell out the side, and then he went off to like Notts County or wherever he ended up, and you never really hear much about him. I think, unfortunately, Zach Mitchell might be one of those sort of players where he just fizzles out. And
I think it's a summer you move him on, or he'll end up in a year's time down the line, contract just ending. So, as I say, not one to be too bothered about, but one to move on to next then. Once again, I think a really easy one, but a very sad one this season. Josh Edwards. I'm just it's keep. I'm so excited to see him. I think even in those early few games showed so much, and I can't remember, he didn't have many, did he? September, I think, when he was injured.
Yeah, he got injured very early on in the season. Obviously, it was a season-ending injury, so we have been really unlucky in that regard because he is such a good player for us, and actually like epitomises how Nathan Jones plays. We know what style of player he is, and he already, like you said, in the few games at the end of the Championship, showed that he is more than capable player at that level. So he's one that hopefully we'll see it back as a regular left back next season. 100%. I really rate him.
Yeah, nice and easy on that one. And moving to yet another loan. It's a very interesting one with this one. Harry Clark.
Yeah, I've been pretty impressed with him overall. I think he is one that came in when we were sort of looking a bit ropey at the back and we were conceding a lot of goals. And again, we were struggling with that right-hand side as well as the left. What I like about him is he does put himself about. He's got a bit of pace. He does like to get up the pitch. The only thing is that has frustrated me at times, and he did it against Swansea actually yesterday, was there's moments where he sort of bombs up the pitch, loses the ball and puts us in a pretty dangerous area. And I think he's done that quite a few times this season. Sometimes he gets lucky and he can sort of recover, or we recover. But at times he has actually been a bit lax in the way that he sort of loses the ball and then it's put us in trouble.
Do you think some of that's maybe that I think historically had played kind of more right back than right wing back, and some
Maybe.
of that's learning the role of playing
Positioning.
that kind of slightly more attacking?
Yeah.
Because you do have to rely on that player to be a player that bombs forward, and maybe there's
Yeah.
been a bit of naivety there.
But also we have to look at where we've signed him from. So he's on loan from Ipswich, isn't he? And Ipswich just got promoted. So I would have thought Ipswich would be looking to offload him now, because I don't think he'll be part of their plans for the Prem. So then that's like, well, okay, where does he end up going? Do we invest? Do we look at and see do we think he's done enough? I'm not 100% convinced. I think there might be other avenues we could go down where we get someone in that's maybe a bit more exciting.
I think with Harry Clark, the way I look at it, I'm similar to you. I've actually been overall quite impressed with him. I think he's been an important signing, and I think he has brought a lot to this second half of the season in a positive way. I think I'd sit really on a fence where if we signed him, I'd be absolutely fine with that and quite happy.
Yeah.
And if we didn't, I'd also be fine with that. I wouldn't be too fussed. And as I say, I'd like to think if we don't sign him, it's because we've seen a better opportunity that's better suited to our system and our squad. So, but I do like him, and one thing I do like, and I think he does suit the squad really well, is I do think he has the Nathan Jones kind of never give up attitude and very much kind of passionate.
That's why he got brought in.
Yeah, you can, so I think that side, as I say, definitely I would have no worries at all if we did.
No, like I'm on the same sort of side as you really with that. I think if he came back in, we wouldn't be too disappointed. But likewise, if he didn't sign back up, we'd look at somewhere else. I think we could probably get somewhere similar. So,
2 more to go then on the defenders. One being Keenan Goff, who I think youth player coming through.
I think
he's shown
keep
some
him,
good.
and
Of course you do.
He's got a lot of potential, hasn't he? So
there's a few players like that really come under that youth kind of side of things, which they're just developing in the background, really, aren't they? So but hopefully, I think
he's got
one
potential.
thing I will say,
I think when he did come in, he did well.
Yeah, the bits he has come in on, actually, I think we potentially there have got quite a good player on our hands. The final one, Kane Ramsey.
Yeah. At one point this season, I think we've spoken about this in previous sort of episodes. I was earmarking him as like one of the best right backs in the league. He was looking so good. I think he has really tailed off this season, and I think he's still got that ability to be a very, very class right back. And I think he's got that natural pace. He's very, very good at recovering. That's one of his best traits, actually, is if he does let someone get past him, he can recover very quickly. The only problem we've had recently is that he's sort of, I think because of his lack of game time injury, he had time out of the side when he got red carded against Millwall and stuff.
That's
like
when it all went down.
Yeah, that seemed to be the catalyst for like when it started to go a bit off the boil. What I will say is I still think there's a really good player there. I think maybe actually the summer might be a good opportunity for him to sort of reset, come back and actually show us what he was like at the beginning of last season, this season. And I think he could still do that. So for me, it's a keep. Albeit he is one of those that's on a knife edge now. I think he could go one or two ways.
Got a year left on his contract. I mean, I suppose looking at that, like the keep side of things, but if a good offer came in the summer, would you
the thing is, though,
entertain
do you
it?
think there would be? I'm not sure we would have many people coming in for him. I think because of his sort of form towards the back end. I think
you've got to look at that both ways, though, because I do think it's why. So I sit in the camp of definitely keep with Kane Ramsey. I think he was really good for us in League One. He showed very good signs at the beginning of the Championship, and definitely has tailed off. And as I say, that catalyst, that red card, I think there was a little bit of the season where I think the way in which maybe Nathan Jones dealt with that red card kind of rubbed him up the wrong way, and it seemed that there might have been a bit of an issue there. I still think there's very good signs of a very good player there, and maybe one that's just been low on confidence towards the tail end of this season. I do think there would be suitors there, and if we had a reasonably good offer in, I'm not completely and utterly against it. But I also think there's an interesting conversation around Kane Ramsey, which is, you said it right at the beginning, a right back. And we've obviously played him as this right-sided centre-back. When we talk about Harry Clark on that right-hand side, is there any world where you look at him going back into that right wing back role?
100%. And actually,
I just worry that maybe the attacking side, whether he's quite up to it there.
Yeah, he's got the pace there, isn't he? And if he could get his crossing up, then maybe. But
But
I
even
do.
as a backup, so kind of
Yeah,
when you look at him in regards to keep, the fact he can play right-sided centre-back,
I was just about to say
right
his
back, yeah,
versatility
it's
is
kind of like
is a
almost a
plus.
no-brainer to
Yeah, I
me.
think he gives us options as a defence, as an actual centre back, and also on the right hand side as well. So
Mm,
that's another reason why he's a useful player to have in the squad, whatever
mm,
happens. I think.
mm.
Yeah.
No, I'd agree. Well, let's move on then into our midfield. And to be fair, some of the defenders we've gone through because we play such turgid football sometimes are our centre mids. But
Yeah.
so this list is a little bit shorter. But one to start with. I think as a season, he'd say it's been a frustrating one in regards to game time, and I think he's probably been a little bit harshly treated. But Joe Rankin Costello, in
Yeah.
contract till like I think it's summer of 2029. So
Yeah.
I think
Got a few years.
we've seen it in interviews. The fact he's been described as a much longer term prospect
Mhm.
for us. For me, a no brainer. He's a keep when it comes to that
I think
midfield.
he's one of those players that we can see now, like in certain games, he has shown like glimpses of being a really quality player.
Hmm.
He's obviously had a lot of experience in the Championship as well, at Blackburn.
Quite a utility player as well.
Yeah,
We've not seen it, but
yeah, no, I mean he is one that actually has the ability to get his foot on the ball, and that's why I've said we've lacked so much this season. And actually, the times he has come in, he's actually given us that option to sort of get his foot down, and actually like look up and play those passes that we've really struggled to sort of play in.
Mhm.
So I'm with you as well, like 100% keep. Like you said, he's been brought in for the future. Excuse me.
Bless you.
Thank you. But yeah, so I'd say definitely keep him, and I think actually he's one that we might look at sort of getting a lot more game time next season.
Mm.
Albeit
No,
with players around him.
I agree. So two to move on to, which I think is interesting. I'm very interested to see what your thoughts are towards this.
Yeah.
Let's start on Connor Coventry. Got a year left on his contract.
So the weird thing about Coventry is he's been such a stalwart for us for so long. Like he's been really that pivotal sort of player in that position, that defensive mid. He's been sort of drafted in and out a bit more this season, and I'm not sure if that's because Jones thinks that he has other options now that he can rotate out with, or if he has sort of seen parts of his game where he's maybe limited at that level. And I kind of can't still quite work that out because I do still think there's a good player there, and I think he's been really important for us since he's come in throughout his whole time at Charlton. My only thing with it is, could we get somebody in? And this is where I think we need to, if we're going to push on as a club and actually become more progressive, those positions, especially the deep line midfielders, we need one that's going to be that dogged, run around and win the ball, which he does do that, to be fair. But I'm wondering if we can get someone in that's maybe a bit more hybrid that can do that dirty side, but also can play the ball better. And that's where, if we are looking down those avenues, that Coventry will be one that eventually will be subbed out. And I think I wouldn't be massively disappointed if we did look at moving him on in the summer, because I think he is limited. I think he does the part of his game that he does so well is the breaking up the play and tracking players and things like that. But I also think there's plenty of other players that we could look at that could do that job and more. That's where I think I'm at with it.
Yep.
So I'd say potentially sell. But if we kept him again, it's one that I think is a valuable squad player.
Yeah, I would sell. I think midfield is where we've had so many issues this season, and for me, Connor Coventry, I think it's the noticeable area we can upgrade, and I think it's actually to a different style of player, and I don't see it as actually a negative. I think with Connor Coventry, he could step into many other squads, and if all you need is that kind of terrier holding mid, I'm sure he could do the job. But if we are going to evolve, we are going to move forward, for me, I don't think we do it with Connor Coventry. Not long ago, I actually thought he was, even towards the beginning of the season, I think I saw him as maybe more important than what he was. And I think I think in League One, he was really that. I just think as we've stepped up, the more I've seen it. And I actually think there's, as you've said, signs of it in the background. The fact that the way he's kind of been treated within the squad and the fact he has started dropping out a bit more, Cody coming in, I think it is just a natural sign. And I also think it's someone who, I think there'd be a lot of people who'd be happy to take him, and I think especially
he's a quality player. Like he is, he's very good at what he does, and I think that, like you said, there'll be a lot of teams out there that would say actually he's perfect for what we need, and therefore we could actually offload him.
Yeah, I would. I think that's where I'd sit on it for many of the reasons you've kind of said. And I think in a very similar conversation, the next one going on to is Greg Doherty. For me, keep as a squad player. I've ummed and ahed this season over Greg Doherty, but I think he does bring more to his game than Connor Coventry does in regards to if you're keeping a midfielder around to kind of do the dogged work to bring into certain games. I think he is brilliant in certain games, and when you give him that job, I think we have seen, especially towards the end of the season, he is a very, very capable player.
Works very
when
hard
you're
as
given
well.
that kind of job, yes, he has his pitfalls, but I'd quite like to see a Greg Doherty around some slightly more creative players and kind of letting him do what he wants to. But I think he just bleeds kind of passion. And I think sometimes when it comes to derby days and all those kind of things, as I say, I don't want to particularly see him as probably a week in, week out starter, but I think 1,000,000% for me. And it's so different to what I felt 4 or 5 months ago, but I think everything I've seen, I definitely would want to keep him
I
around.
think in the performances that he's put in these sort of crunch times where we've really desperately needed a player to just take the game and actually just put everything into it, he stepped up, and I think that's actually a sign of, like you said, a player with character and a player that, regardless of whether he's like more of a regular in the side, which I don't think he would be if we kept him for next season. I think he'd be one that might just come in at times, like you said, where we really need that dogged sort of player. But he's valuable to us, and actually, like I said, I've been really critical of him at times this year because he's frustrated the hell out of me because I think he's so limited in terms of his like actual playing the ball sort of ability and stuff like that. But actually, if you think about it, that's not really what he's there for. And if he has those better players around him, all of a sudden he does come into his own a bit more.
I also think as well he has that championship experience, which for me probably what teeters it over the Connor Coventry side of it is I think that championship
one of the
experience
two
is
would
pretty
have to
valuable.
go, and I think if you got to pick, Coventry's probably the one you'd let go.
Yeah,
if you can get the right money for him.
I'd agree. Moving on to from there, a really, really simple one. Just as I say, excited for the future, but Ibby Fuller, one that I'm really excited to see. He could have kind of dropped into the kind of winger conversation, I guess, but
he's class. Like you can tell, like he's 18 years old and he's like holding his own in the championship when he's not even played any game time in the championship. So he's got a natural flair. Like he's really exciting, and I think. Is he one that we might loan out? I don't know. Like, I don't know if he needs a bit of a sort of bulking up. And
I think we need to next season. We either put him in because I think he's actually. I wouldn't say we've affected his development because he's so young. Like, there's no doubt about it.
He's good enough.
Yeah, I think maybe a season in League One if we're not going to have him as part of our kind of first team plans. Which I don't know. Look, the problem with a player like that, you don't know what happens kind of behind the scenes, how they're developing him.
Yeah,
it seems like a loan move might be the right decision, but
that's on Nathan Jones, isn't it? To be fair,
the problem is, and also when they're that young, some managers will just see it. He's actually better because they see the talent in him. They actually think he's better being around the first team setup, albeit not playing week in, week out. So. Yeah, time will tell with that one, really, won't it?
But I mean, keep 100% is no-brainer, yeah.
And a player who I have a very kind of soft spot for, but I think, well, clearly I think it's going to be the summer where he does leave the club, but Luke Berry.
Yeah, he hasn't had much game time at all, has he? But like you said, he's been a really, really
likeable
player. Yeah, he has.
Character.
And like he actually, in games, even this season, in games where we've like really struggled with the ball up the top of the pitch, when he comes on, he still looks dangerous. Like he's that sort of player where he could just score a goal out of nowhere.
Yeah, and he's not a championship player.
No, not anymore. He was back in the day. Like he played in the Premier League, to be fair, at Luton. But now he's at the tail end of his career. You can see like he's not really got the legs anymore.
No.
And I think he's one that we will move on.
Well, he'll go out of contract. I don't even know. I can't.
Is he out of contract?
He's out of contract this summer.
Yeah, well, he's gone then.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, fair play to him. He's done really well for us, and actually played under Nathan Jones, who he knows really well.
Yeah.
And
he's a player who, as I say as well, when you look back over time and you look back on squads in a few years' time and all that kind of thing, he's one that always, as I say, I really liked as a Charlton player. So
no, definitely.
And then moving on to two of the summer signings. Once again, I think these are really easy decisions towards things, but one being Sonny Carey. He's a keep 100%. Obviously, had a really good first half of the season. I think it's an interesting season for him next year because the one thing I do feel towards him is it was very much a tale of two halves of the season, and I think he's got a lot to also work on. And I think especially the decision making, and I think in the Championship, half the step up.
He'll have learned that this season.
But half the step up is ability, and the other half is actually learning how and when to kind of make the right decision. And I think decision making is where you start. They're getting to the level in the Championship and above where that's predominantly actually where the difference in a lot of
You
players.
do, when you watch him at times, you do scream at the screen and sort of say, play it, or, you know,
Mhm.
because he does sometimes dilly a little bit. But one thing I will say, and I've said it all along, is actually he's going to be even more dangerous with players around him who actually then allow him to be a bit freer. And because at the moment he's so like, he feels like he needs to do all that sort of running work and all that stuff.
Mhm.
Whereas he has a few more creative players around him, all of a sudden he really becomes an interesting player to watch. And I think he'll grow next
And I
season.
wonder if this season there has been the fatigue of him being the only one. And sometimes I think those runs he goes on and doesn't play the pass and shoots, whether that just comes from him feeling like he's the only
Yeah.
one who can do things. So, yeah, I think it's an important season for him next
It
season.
is.
To kind of really start to grab some of that, what made him so good at the
I
beginning
think
of the
we'll.
season.
I think we'll see him
Mm.
be just as good next season with better players around him.
And another one to move on from there, then Harvey Nibbs. Obviously had really, really bad luck with the injury he got. Didn't right at the beginning really get the chances towards things. I don't know, because when was his injury? I mean, I think it was.
It was fairly.
I want to say it was around Christmas time,
Yeah,
but I might be
he
wrong.
got hammered, didn't he? And we thought he might be out for the rest of the season because it's a bad injury.
I think it was around December, Christmas time.
I think it was around that sort of time.
I really like Harvey Nibbs, and I really
Yeah, I
want to
do.
see a little bit more of him. What the future holds for him in a Charlton shirt, that's the thing I don't know. I don't know if we see him as he's someone we've got in line to be kind of a starter. Is he a squad player going forward? Is he an impact sub? I think the problem with him is I look at him a little bit like a new signing next year. I don't really feel like we got to see enough of what
He's 100%
is about.
staying, because he was another one that's been signed. And
He's a long term. He's again 2029. So
but he was one that was signed and there was a lot of excitement around that signing at the time, and I think there still is excitement around it because, like you said, he's not really played. So it's like, actually, let's really next season see what he's got, because there's clearly a really good player there. It's just unlocking that and actually giving him game time to actually show us what he's got. So I'm really excited to see what he has next season. And like you said, we've signed him on a long contract, so he will be one that Jones will be looking to get more out of next season. I'm excited to see him play.
Definitely. I added in this other category because I don't really know where these players drop into because they're not really in the striking, attacking force. Sometimes they've been wing backs, they've been this, that, the other. So they drop into their own little category. But first of all, lone player Jaden Fevrier.
Yeah, he's a really difficult one to discuss actually because he really has brought something that we've really missed this season. Actually, been an exciting player to watch. And even like in the game yesterday, like he still is really dangerous. Like he's the one player that sort of you look at to create things. The goal he scored against Hull was brilliant. And I don't know is the honest answer because if he's going back on anyway.
That's not an option.
No. Well, if I had to say, I would say he's obviously going back to Stockport. We would have to look at signing him, and whether that comes with because. The strange thing about that one was the switch with Tanto. Now, whether there becomes a deal in place where we switch the two and then there's some money involved or however that would end up being, I wouldn't be against having him in there because I've been really impressed with how he has coped with playing in the Championship. I don't think you find many Charlton fans who would be against it, to be honest, for the right sort of deal. And that's where I sit. I think if we could get it at the right price, I would happily take him. I think if we don't sign him, then we need to look at getting a player in that's a similar sort of style of player because he has been something that we've drastically missed this season, and I've been really pleased with how he's sort of settled.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. I think there is rose-tinted goggles at what he brings in regards to Charlton fans. I think he's had a really good end to the season. And he's had, I'd describe it as moments that kind of made you maybe...
He's still a bit raw as well, which
I have to admit, when I look overall at his performances, away from that whole game, I think he does show signs of being this kind of tricky winger. But for me, I think I said it in the video before, I do think he is kind of a League One player. I think the only way it makes sense is the deal in which we discussed before, which was a straight swap or some small amount of money swap with Tanto. I'd be on board with that. I think it'd be worth the kind of gamble on it. And I think at his age, there's potential.
He's quite young still. He's 24, isn't he?
23, I think.
23,
23, 24. So I think there's worth a gamble if the deal is quite favourable and it's not too much kind of risk on it. My gut feeling says that I don't think he's quite the right fit. I think he more highlights what we need as the style of player, that kind of slightly trickier, slightly pacier, whatever it is. but I think we could go out and get better.
But don't forget as well, he was brought in almost a bit of an emergency loan, wasn't it? Like, it was sort of
He's
one
done a
right at the
brilliant
end
job.
of
Like
the-
really, I will never forget him for
Yeah.
the for the goal against Hull. And,
Yeah,
as I say, some of the moments and that he has brought in that time, and I think
Yeah.
he's been really valuable in what he's brought, especially for the laughs that kind of came when we signed him. But
yeah.
for me, as I say, I just don't think he's the answer going forward. I would hope we go for better quality, and I don't think there's any horrible.
No, there's not, and he's done a job. Like, regardless of what happens, like he has come in and done a job, which is what what Jones would have wanted from him. So, one to watch, but like you've said, if nothing happens, we'll be looking at something else anyway. So, yeah.
Probably one of the most controversial ones. Let's do the quick one first. Kaheem Dixon. He seems like a young, raw kind of player there. He's one of those players. I would not be surprised if he ends up going back down like into quite a few divisions below. Obviously had his period over at Crawley, was it? I think, and was recalled. I don't know what to really think.
I don't think we
there's
can
no real
blood.
pressure on it. Is
I
there?
don't know. We signed him for not much money from like Jamaica. Do you know what I mean?
Mm.
Like, he's a prospect. He's young. He's playing in the academy at the moment, so like in the under-21s.
And I think he does really well
Yeah,
in
he
the
does. He does,
under-21s. Like,
which makes me think, like, is there going to be a time where actually we just say, right, let's give him a go, like properly give him a go and see what he's got, because there's nothing to lose.
he's quite a way out.
He's raw.
Yeah.
He's raw as anything, but he will be one that actually either gets loaned back out, like you said, or we ended up not really playing him down the line, and he gets.
I think next season, categorically, if you're going out to Crawley and not really performing, he's categorically alone next year.
He's got to be loaned out. Yeah.
What happens in the future, I don't know. And I'm not really too fussed. It was quite a fun signing at the time. Whether he comes to anything,
it's a punt of a signing, and I think like the club's got links with the Jamaicans now, like the Mount Pleasant or whoever it is. But he's one that we'll just see whether he develops or not. But he won't be breaking into the first team next season. Put it that way.
No. And let's probably go for the one of two most controversial characters at Charlton. I think discussion points at Charlton, but TC. Technically out of contract this summer, but we got the 1 year extension, which we're taking through to next summer.
Yeah, that will happen. I think. I think we'll definitely extend.
Well,
we would.
If we were going to sell it,
run
we would.
Contract. Yeah. So
madness.
So yeah, that will trigger obviously the final year. I don't know. Can you talk about him? Because
so TC for me,
it's a really hard one to talk about.
It's a really difficult one. Look, throughout this season, I felt that he potentially like a loan move would be the right move. But I think when I actually look at his contract situation, which I don't think I was quite aware of, you don't loan out a player that's only got a year left who's a saleable asset. For me, loan keep. I think he is a keep, but I don't want him to be the player that we are relying on. I think I still think he's at an age where things could click. And I think the way I look at that is, I think there was one summer where he went away, got a bit more physical, and he was definitely a different beast that season. There could be a really strong kind of development over the summer, and he could become a much better player. The one thing I think he highlights is, and I've said this so many times before with TC, when he's not there, he's so noticeable, but that's because he's pretty much the only kind of player we've got like him.
Yeah.
And I think there needs to be more competition in that space. I think there's probably an argument to say we need to have someone who's probably a guaranteed starter ahead of him. And if then off the back of that, we see consistent performances coming in when he's coming off the bench and he starts to really kind of live up to that potential, a bit more consistency, I would be so happy for that, because he's the one player I have such a strong want for him to succeed. And I kind of, whenever we get to this conversation, my kind of frustration is there's such a desperation for him, and I think he's got everything there too, but there's always something that kind of niggles in the back of my head where I think
the only thing in his favour as well is that he's not had a whole season in the Championship before, so this season will have been a massive learning curve for him, and actually maybe having that year to like sort of adapt and actually know what the league's all about, he come back next season and actually be a different animal. And that's really what we're all hoping for, I think. So regardless, he's going to be in there, and then like you said, it's whether he's more relied on or if he sort of gets that more impact player off the bench sort of role, and that suits him pretty much, I would say, better anyway. I think he tends to be a good player to bring off the bench because he brings something really dangerous. And that may be where his role lies for next season. Regardless, though, he is definitely a player that has value in the squad. Like, that's no doubt about that.
And
It's
I
just
think
how he adapts to things.
for me, if we did sell him in the summer, I wouldn't be distraught, but it would have to be on the basis we've really improved on that position, or we've brought someone in that realistically, or the money there
The
is
money has to be good as well.
But I'm just not sure you do get that with only a year left in your contract.
No.
I just think everything all over it says keep, but
Yeah.
I just don't think wannabe is a reliance. So
No, we can't be as heavily reliant on him as we have been this year.
let's move on to then finally the strikers, and then we're going to go on to the loans, but I think the loans will be a bit quicker on just on those. But let's start on Lyndon Dykes, out of contract. I have to admit, I think he's done his job, and as much as when he first came in, I would have said 100% keep. I think I'm happy to see him go. I really like what he's brought, and I actually think he's a really likeable character. I think if we're going to develop, I want to see more of your Charlie Kelman type striker in our
I'd agree
squad.
with that, to be fair.
And I just don't think, albeit I think you still want an option like Lyndon Dykes, I just wonder if there's a different type of player to him, and I'm sure he will have people who want his signature, whatever kind of, whether that's in Championship or going down to League One. I'd assume,
Should even be abroad, to be fair.
yeah, I'd assume there'd be some Championship takers in there, but yeah, I think I sit on the side of I'm happy to say thank you so much for everything you've done.
Yeah.
One of the more important signings this season in what he's brought, but
done a brilliant job, to be fair, since he's come in and brought us something really that we needed badly at the time.
I think the second half of his kind of time with us is probably the side that a lot of.
He's not a massive goal scorer, is he?
No.
Let's put it that way. Like the thing that he brings is sort of the physical side, the winning the headers, that sort of thing. And I think really, like you said, we really need to be looking at goal scorers now, because that's something we've drastically missed this season. And actually, Dykes has been really useful, but I think we need to look at adapting the way we attack going forwards, and that will be through the midfield and the strikers. And we need to be looking at someone that's going to hit the net a lot more regularly than someone like a Lyndon Dykes. But he has served his purpose. He's been a really good player for us, and he'll, like I said, there'll be takers for him regardless of what happens. So, yeah, he's probably one that we won't necessarily see again next season.
No.
Yeah.
No, I agree. Easy one to move on to. Big summer signing, Charlie Kelman. Keep. I think he's got an important season next year. I think he's actually got one that we can really I hope we give him the tools to kind of actually take advantage of his style of play better, and not force him into these kind of
proven that he can score goals, and like high quality goals as well. He just needs the chances, and again, this is where that really investing in the middle of the park is going to really push him on, because all of a sudden he's going to have service, which he's desperately not had this season. So let's just hope that we can really push on with him, and like you said, actually he could be our main man next season if he really did kick on. So,
100%.
Yeah, he's fine for that reason.
Yep. Two that, once again, these are probably the more difficult of the two. Let's start with the one that, once again, up on the wall, but Matty Godden. I'm happy to start on this one. I think it's time to go. I really do. It's time to go. I just think with him, I thank him so much, and I think if there was a fit Matty Godden who was just aging, I think without doubt you'd be saying keep him. I worry about the injuries, what it's kind of done to him. The one we've just seen, and similar to how we're kind of discussing with Reece Burke, albeit with a lot more sentiment attached to this one, I just don't think there's place in our squad to be having these. When we talk about the tough decisions that have to be made, for me, he summarises that better than anyone, because I just don't think it's the right decision to extend that out. And as much as there's I think any...
Is he out of contract?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think the only thing that keeps you there is sentiment, because I think any sensible side, and I think that injury towards the last in the Sheffield Wednesday game, was it? I think it might have been, or no.
It's the one where he's hobbling around, and
the Ipswich game.
I remember.
To me, if you're the board if you're the board and the management wondering, umming and ahhing whether you make the decision, to me that probably makes it a bit easier.
Yeah, I would agree. It's a sad one though, because I think he's still got stuff to offer. Like you said, if he was fully fit, I think he's still quality enough to get goals at that level. We've seen he is, even the short amount of time he's got on the pitch this season. But the injury side of things is a real problem. And actually, we need to start looking at players that can actually run through a 46-game season and do it to the level we need it to be in terms of keeping fit. And he unfortunately probably can't do that anymore, which sort of makes the decision easier in a weird way. That's
Easier
sort
and
of forced, isn't it?
yeah, easier and difficult, because to say there is another way this could have gone, where 100% we're all sitting here saying, yeah, without doubt,
Yeah.
to keep him. But yeah, I just think
I think it probably is time to let him go. But what a player he's been for us at a time, and
such a memorable player for someone who really, it's one full year, really, isn't it?
his
'Cause
goal scoring record is brilliant.
but he only really did a season, because
Yeah.
he's been injured all year this
Yeah.
year. So it's one season, but my God, he's going to go down as a real kind of fan favourite.
Yeah,
So,
100%.
yeah.
Yeah.
And the final one, once again, probably comes alongside TC in regards to the controversy with this one, but Miles Lieburn, 2 years left on his contract.
Still young is the only thing in his favour, really. I think you've said in previous videos how you feel that actually maybe he's just not quite a championship level player. And I sort of, the more I think about it, the more I sort of maybe sit in that category, because actually that, I mentioned it earlier, like the commentator bringing up the fact that's his first goal in 26. That to me rings massive alarm bells in terms of like, is he good enough at that level? And the more I think about it, the more I think probably not. Whether I wouldn't loan him out either. I think he's either one that you move on or you keep in the squad as like a sort of, because we don't forget, if we do say we're not keeping hold of Dykes, then actually Lieburn becomes the only one that's that big physical style player. But then he's not really a win the headers and sort of bully people style striker, because he's still got quite good feet and he still can like hit the back of the net when he wants to. But he's just been so hot and cold this year, and I think people struggle with the way he plays, the way he like sort of the runs. He's very quite like, he looks like he runs slow. Yeah, I think I'd be tempted to move him on, and then look at again, because I think strikers has just been a real problem for us this year, and it's highlighted by the lack of goals.
I think with the TC side, there's a redeeming kind of side of it where you look at it and go, and it always kind of brings you back. That kind of went out the window for me with Miles Lieburn quite a while back. I don't think he's good enough. He's not a championship player. I think even at League One, he's had a spotty kind of record towards things. Throughout his whole Charlton career. For me, there was a big turning point. I think when he had that really bad injury where he was out for a significant amount of time, I don't think he ever quite came back the same player. I think there was always that concern around it. And for me, we have seen enough. I'm with you. I don't think it's a loan out. I think you move him on in the summer. I think there will be definite suitors, because I think,
still young.
could we see a player there who in 3 or 4 years' time could develop into the player that we think and could be playing at championship level? Maybe. But at the moment he's not, and I think his time with us, to me, I think we talk about how sometimes for a player to develop they have to actually come away from a certain club. I kind of think that with him, and with that he might then become just a solid League One player. He might, whatever he might do, I think the time's up now.
It's a funny one though, because if all those players that we've just gone through in strikers do end up getting moved on, then we've only really got Kelman in there. We're going to have to invest quite heavily in that top part of the pitch, but I think we need to. I think that's where the midfield and the striking is where we really need to push on in the summer. And I think we need to look at some more proven goal scorers, because that's been a huge problem. And Lieburn actually, unfortunately, sits in that category of being part of the problem.
Yeah. No, I agree. Well, let's quickly move on then that's the whole of the squad there. I think, to be fair, quite...
Yeah, fairly on the same page.
Yeah, fairly, yeah.
To be fair, some of them write themselves in a way.
I think it's quite an easy list to go through in a lot of ways there.
Yeah.
I say, I think it's for me just so exciting going into the summer as to where we are,
seeing what we can do,
seeing what we do. But before we do dip into that market, we have got some players out on loan, so I don't want to spend too much time on these, but I think we can quickly kind of summarise. First one, start on Rob Apter, contracted to like summer 29. Seems to, I mean, a lot of fans who weren't happy when he went out on loan, hasn't really done much at Bolton. I don't think they've been massively impressed. For me, potentially whether another loan move out might be the right choice. But I also don't think it's out of the question he could be part of our plans as a squad player. And I think when we look at the one thing I always think with Rob Apter is, I think you can get away with having slightly lower quality players, especially within your squad and the bench, if they bring a very different aspect. And probably what we've seen with like a Fevrier this year, where we say he's probably not quite the right quality, but he does bring a quality that's dangerous at parts of the
Very
game.
quick, and he's not afraid to have a shot and that sort of thing,
Mm.
which is what we've needed really, actually, from certain players this season. I think that he could potentially come in and be a squad player this next season. Interesting to see what Jones thinks. I'm not sure how sort of beneficial another loan move for him would be, because it might just dent his confidence. Like, he probably wasn't that happy about going out on loan this season, but I think the experience to go out and maybe realise that, it's not as easy as maybe he first thought, to actually just drop into a new team. And actually it's given him maybe some hunger to come back and say, right, I'm going to really actually try and push into this team. I'd be more than happy for him to come in and be a rotation.
Yep, no, I agree. Alex Mitchell, I think prime to sell.
Plymouth love him. He's been like their player of the season. I think he's won player of the season at Plymouth.
Yeah.
They've got a bit of money as well, and they're a team that are actually up there in terms of one of the better teams in League One. He's been pivotal in what sort of their turnaround in terms of form. They're going to want to sign him. I've seen loads of things about them wanting to sign him.
I don't think he's good enough for a championship, and I think you've got a saleable asset. So
we
for
could
me,
get a couple of mil for him potentially. So
no brainer. Yeah.
Selling.
A tough one whether he goes into the starting lineup or not. But Gasson Hadway. I don't even know what he's done at Stevenage. I don't see him too much.
He scored a couple, I think. Yeah. Then he got injured, came back to us, and then he's just sat around. I don't even know what he's up to now. But unfortunately we spent quite a bit of money on him at the time, over $1 million, wasn't it?
Still contracted to summer 28.
He'll be sold. He'll get sold. Where he goes and how much loss.
I think we'll cut our losses, or he'll just keep going out on loan until his contract ends. But easy one to move on from. Tanto, I don't think he's good enough.
He had little moments this season. Did score a goal against Sheffield United, didn't he? But I think he's not shown us enough to think that he's got enough to keep going.
He's also not young. He's not a player you're going to mould. And at the end of the day, he's not a championship quality player. He's a League One quality player.
We took a bit of a punt.
We took a punt. Maybe there was a play where it worked, but even when we signed him, a lot of Stockport fans were saying, "What? Like, he's not a championship player." Like, I think it's a punt we've taken. It's gone wrong, and for me, move him on.
But also, I don't even know when he's gone back to Stockport. He's not done brilliantly. I know they're in the playoffs now, so we might see some of him in the playoffs.
But you look at his stat; he was never like a League One like powerhouse.
Not massively. He did score quite a few goals for them at a time, but. Yeah, I don't know if Stockport would be interested in re-signing him. I don't know. I don't know how he's done. But I think he's probably one we look to move on.
Yep. Terry Taylor?
Well, he's been relegated with Northampton into League 2.
Yeah. He's out of contract in the summer anyway. So I had to bring that one up just because it's amazing. I forget the fact he was still a Charlton player is quite amazing.
Yeah, no, he's gone.
But moving on to one who we will remember, but Croy Anderson.
Blackpool fans love him. And I think he's really enjoyed his time there as well.
Sell.
I think it's a sell too. Yeah.
He's not good enough. He's not good enough for Charlton. I don't think.
No, but these loans actually. We talk about Mitchell and being loved by Plymouth, and then maybe signing him. Maybe Blackpool might come in for him.
But I think that's where the loans can be actually quite successful, and where we've done so poorly with that kind of thing in the past. You can send a player out on loan with no particular thought of him being a future prospect for you, but actually getting his value up. And the fact that with some of these players, Croy Anderson for me he's not. I don't see him as part of our plans.
They really rate him at Blackpool, but obviously we're looking at a level below, and actually at that level he's probably decent. League One level, a club
okay.
But at a club like Blackpool, we're talking about a club that are like sniffing around relegation zone.
I think he's an okay League One player.
Yeah, but that's where he's sat now in a Blackpool side, and actually they might be interested to spend a few $100,000 on him, and we sort of get him off the books. So.
Yep.
Yeah.
Nathan Asimwe.
Well, he did really well, I think, at AFC Wimbledon. And
I think he started well and kind of tailed off a little bit, but that's kind of how Wimbledon's season went, to be honest.
It is. He's still young, but he's not really had that much game time for Charlton throughout his whole time, has he? So I think when we're looking at having Edwards in at left back, probably looking at getting somebody else in to as backup, I don't see where he fits in.
He's only got a year left on his contract.
I think he might
I would probably move on.
Yeah.
But it might be a loan out again and then just goes for a free, I'm not sure. And two of the probably more exciting ones and very interested to see your thoughts on. Let's start with Dan Carnu. He just won League 2
Young Player of the
I
Year.
think Young Player of the Year, and I
Yeah.
think he might have even won Player of the Year.
I think he won Young Player of the Year. I don't think he won Player of the Year, but he for Walsall he might have done.
Yeah, it might have
Yeah.
been Walsall's Player of the
Um,
Year.
But yeah, he's had a brilliant season, and actually he's one that has a lot of potential. And actually, if we're looking at strikers that score goals, he does score goals, and albeit at a lower level, he scored goals this season. Who knows? You could bring him in, and he could start scoring. He's got that eye for goal, and he's raw pace. I think maybe put him in the squad next season and see how he does. Albeit that depends on who we bring in as new
Yeah, 'cause
strikers.
he's
in this
21.
team. I definitely would look at
Mm.
putting him in the squad.
Do you think though there's another side of that, which is, do you look at him and think, okay, well, you've got someone who's red hot potentially there as someone
To
you could
sell.
sell?
He's red hot in League Two, though, isn't he? That's the thing. So it's like, okay, yeah, you've done well at League Two level, but all of a sudden, can you do it?
Could
at
one
higher
of the
level?
bigger teams in League One, for example,
Maybe
look at him?
they might do, but I think he's an asset for us at the moment, and I think there's nothing to lose in terms of like giving him some
I
time.
think I'd really like to see him across pre-season before we
Yeah.
make any decisions. I'd quite like to see us actually try and use him within pre-season, to see a little bit more on there. But I think I'd
keep
sit
him.
on keep.
I'd keep him. Yeah, maybe. Put him
I
in
think
the squad.
keep him potential plans, if not maybe another loan move out. Once again, he's another one. He's only got a year
The
left.
thing
in
is,
his
I don't
contract.
really like seeing players get loan after loan after loan because essentially you're just kicking the can down the road. I think you've either got at some point you've got to just make a decision: are we going to give him a go, or are we going to move him on? And I think I would give him a go. I actually would. I would see what he's got.
Well, the other one there, in a very similar vein, Mika and Bick had an injury, I think, towards the end of the season. So
Danny, because he's Colchester, wasn't he? So Cowley was saying like, oh, he's going to go right to the very top, and like Cowley's hardly like the world's best manager, but when you've got managers coming out saying that, but also he nearly got signed by Brighton, didn't he? They nearly signed him for like 4 or 5 million in the window, and he's a big unit, isn't he? And he scored some impressive goals for Colchester, albeit at a lower level again. But is he one again that we could look at and say, right, let's give him a good go and see what he's got?
I think both him and Dan Carnu, and I think as a fan you can have so many views on players, especially on the senior team. But when it comes to these youth players, it all comes down to the coaching side of it and seeing what kind of characters are they, can they fit in, this, that, the other. Because to be honest, I'll be honest, with players like Mbik, I know a little bit of background towards him, but
he got a bit of game time for us, like back end of one of the League One season. But yeah, we haven't seen any of him like playing in a championship level.
Well, I think Mbik came on in the playoff final, didn't he?
Yeah, he did briefly, yeah. And like he, even in those brief moments that he's got on the pitch for Charlton, you can see that he's a big boy. He's got a frame. He could be actually quite dangerous. What have we got to lose from giving him a shout and maybe putting him on at the end of a game and seeing whether he can cut it at that level? If he can, great. But the only issue I've got is that if Brighton are sniffing around him, are we going to look to move him on in the summer and get cash in?
Well, there might be
worth
a
a lot of
question
money.
to say in the grand scheme of us building our squad, there might be an argument to say
Cash in
and take a bit of money for him, and as much as he might become this really good player, it might be the right decision for the club in regards to reinvesting and getting experienced players in. So, yeah, time will tell with that one. I think both of those are interesting ones that I don't have a directly kind of clear feeling towards it, but I can see lots of different scenarios.
Also, don't forget Nathan Jones will have a much better idea of what his plans are for that sort of area of the pitch. So
yeah, no, definitely.
Yeah.
Well, there we are. That's the kind of going through the squad.
Some interesting moves, and this will all come down to Nathan Jones, to be fair, won't it? And obviously the transfer team.
Yep.
But
and also some players and some bits and pieces in there as well are what we go into as this evolution process. Is that a system evolution? Is it this, that, the other? Because I think there's lots of different bits in there that, depending on how we kind of go into this next stage of things,
it's transfer window dependent, isn't it? Because some of these players are saying, "Oh, we'll move them on," but if we can't get a good replacement in, and then we won't be, will we? So.
And I think some of the players that you do say move on, if they're still around, kind of knocking around the squad, or you haven't sent them out, look, it is what it is, isn't it?
Yeah.
At the end of the day, so
yeah.
Well, brilliant. Well, thank you very much for watching. I'm not sure how long this one's gone on. It feels like we've
chatted for a while,
yeah,
but
chatted
it'd
for
be
a while,
interesting to hear people's views on it as well, whether who they would keep, who they'd move on. Because obviously, like again, we have our views, but a lot of people think certain players are, gods in terms of how good they play. So. And others are useless.
Well, I think it's the interesting thing with any football, really, isn't it? Yeah, everyone has their own opinions.
Of course,
and So definitely do leave in the comments as to what your thoughts were, whether you felt we were widely out or whether you might agree with us. But as always, look, thank you very much for listening. If you do like the video, please do remember to hit the like button. Also subscribe. We will be back for one more video next week. Not sure exactly on timing, but we are going to look back over the whole of kind of this season, and also looking at kind of back at our kind of significant moments, players of the season, and kind of
highlights.
Some highlights looking over it. So that'll be our kind of final one of this season. So we'll look forward to that, and we'll see you on the next one.